Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UCS Defiance and watched the red sun rise over the mining planet below. The year was 2387, and humans had been part of the Galactic Coalition for almost 200 years. Jake had been born into this life, where humans served the alien races that ruled the galaxy. His father had been a miner and his grandfather before him. Now Jake was a ship captain, but he still served alien masters, just like his family always had. The planet below was called Kepler 442b, and it was home to 30,000 human workers. They dug rare metals from the deep mines that the aliens needed for their ships and weapons. The work was hard and dangerous, but humans were good at it. The aliens said humans were built for this kind of work because they were tough and could fix problems quickly when things went wrong. Amy Collins walked onto the bridge carrying a datapad. She was Jake's second in command, and had been his friend since they were kids growing up on Earth. Amy looked tired because she had been working all night checking supply reports. The alien overseers always wanted more metal pulled from the ground, but they never wanted to give the workers better equipment or more food. The morning shift just went down into Sector 7, Amy said as she handed Jake the datapad. The Vorthak supervisors are pushing them to work faster again. They want double production by next week. Jake looked at the numbers on the screen. The Vorthak were the reptile aliens who ran most of the mining operations in this part of space. They had green, scaly skin and yellow eyes that never seemed to blink. Jake had worked for them his whole life, and he knew they thought humans were just tools to be used up and thrown away. Double production means longer shifts and more accidents, Jake said. We already lost 3 workers last month when that tunnel collapsed in Sector 4. Amy nodded and pointed to another part of the report. The medical supplies are running low too. Dr. Martinez requested more, but the Vorthak said it was too expensive. They said humans heal fast enough without extra medicine. Jake felt anger growing in his chest, but he pushed it down like he always did. Getting angry at the aliens never helped anyone. It just got humans in trouble and sometimes got them sent to the punishment colonies where no one ever came back from. The communication system on the bridge made a buzzing sound that meant someone was calling from the Coalition command ship. Jake pressed the button to answer, and the face of Admiral Kethvar appeared on the screen. The Vorthak admiral had been in charge of this system for 5 years, and he treated humans like they were barely better than machines. Captain Morrison, Kethvar said in his cold reptile voice, I want you to take your ship to the outer system and pick up a shipment of new mining equipment. The transport ship broke down, and my crew is too valuable to risk on a repair mission. Jake had heard this before. Whenever there was dangerous work to do, the aliens always sent humans to do it. Yes, sir. When do you need us to leave? Immediately. And Morrison, make sure your crew works quickly. I do not want my schedule delayed because humans cannot perform simple tasks efficiently. The call ended and Jake stared at the blank screen. Amy looked at him and he could see the same frustration in her eyes that he felt every day. They were good at their jobs and they worked hard, but the aliens never showed them any respect. Humans were always the ones who had to take risks while aliens stayed safe. Jake was about to give orders to prepare the ship when alarms started going off all over the bridge. The emergency lights turned red, and the computer voice announced that there had been an accident in the mines below. Jake and Amy ran to the sensor station to see what had happened. The reports were bad. A tunnel had collapsed in Sector 7 and 47 miners were trapped underground. The rocks were blocking all the passages and the workers were running out of air. Jake immediately called down to the planet to talk to the rescue teams. This is Jake Morrison on the Defiance. What do you need for the rescue operation? The voice that answered belonged to Pete Williams, the chief engineer on the planet. Captain, we need the heavy lifting equipment from the Coalition command ship. Our machines are not strong enough to move these rocks and we do not have much time. Jake understood. He opened a channel to Admiral Kethvar's ship and waited for the Vorthak to answer. When the Admiral's face appeared on screen, Jake could see that he was eating his lunch and did not look concerned about the emergency. Admiral, we need to borrow your heavy rescue equipment. 47 miners are trapped and Kethvar held up one scaly hand to stop Jake from talking. Captain Morrison, that equipment is expensive and sophisticated. I cannot risk it being damaged in some human mining accident. My machines are too valuable to waste on replaceable human stock. Jake felt something break inside his chest. For a moment he could not speak or breathe. Amy grabbed his arm and he could see shock on her face. Replaceable human stock. That was how the Admiral saw them. Not as people with families and dreams, but as things that could be thrown away. Sir, these are human lives we are talking about. 47 people will die if we do not act quickly. The Vorthak Admiral took another bite of his food and shrugged. Humans reproduce quickly enough. The loss will be replaced within a year. I suggest you find another solution that does not involve risking coalition property. Jake looked at the screen and saw Amy's reflection next to his own. She was waiting to see what he would do. Every human in the system was waiting to see what he would do. For 200 years, humans had accepted this treatment. They had been told it was their place in the galaxy, and that they should be grateful for the chance to serve the superior alien races. Jake reached over and turned off the communication system. The Admiral's face disappeared from the screen. Amy stared at him with wide eyes, because cutting off communication with a coalition commander was a serious crime that could get them both sent to prison. Jake, what are you doing? Jake turned to face his friend, and for the first time in his life he felt completely free. The anger and frustration that he had been holding inside for years was gone. In its place was something cold and hard and determined. I'm saying no more, Jake said quietly. Get me Pete Williams on the planet. We are going down there to save those miners ourselves. Amy looked at him for a long moment and then she smiled. It is about time someone said that. Jake walked to the captain's chair and sat down. He looked out at the alien command ship floating in space above them and knew that everything was about to change. Humans had been servants for 2 centuries, but that was ending today. He pressed the button to talk to his crew. All hands. This is the captain. We are going to save our people down there, and we are going to do it without permission from the aliens. Anyone who wants to leave can take a shuttle to the command ship. Everyone else prepare for rescue operations. Not one person left the ship. The news traveled faster than Jake Morrison had expected. Within hours of the rescue operation on Kepler 442b, humans across the galaxy were talking about what had happened. They used secret communication channels that the aliens did not monitor, and the story grew with each telling. A human captain had finally said no to an alien commander and saved 47 lives without permission. On the industrial world of Titan 7, Pete Williams got the message while he was checking the production lines in Factory Complex 9. Pete was not the same Pete Williams who worked the mines on Kepler 442b, but he had the same job of keeping humans working, while aliens gave orders. The Zephyrian overseers in this factory were insect creatures with hard shells and too many eyes. They had been demanding longer work shifts and higher production quotas for months. Pete read the message about Jake Morrison 3 times before. He believed it. A human had actually refused an alien order and saved lives. Pete looked around the factory floor where 200 humans were working with dangerous chemicals and worn-out safety equipment. The Zephyrians had denied his requests for new protective gear because they said it cost too much money. When the morning shift supervisor, a Zephyrian called Click 9, approached Pete with demands for increased production, Pete felt something change inside him. Click 9 buzzed and clicked in the way his species talked, and his message was clear. The humans needed to work faster, or they would be replaced with workers from other planets. Pete looked at the alien supervisor and thought about Jake Morrison. No, Pete said quietly. We are not increasing production until you give us proper safety equipment. Click 9's multiple eyes focused on Pete with surprise. You refuse direct order? This is violation of work contract. This is humans saying we deserve to be treated like people instead of machines, Pete replied. He turned to the human workers around him. Everyone stop your machines. We are going on strike until they give us what we need to do our job safely. The factory went quiet for the first time in 10 years. 200 humans stood still and looked at their alien overseers. The Zephyrians buzzed and clicked with anger, but they could not run the machines without human workers. Within an hour, news of the strike was traveling to other factory complexes across Titan 7. 3 systems away on the diplomatic station called Harmony Point, Ambassador Lisa Harper was sitting in another endless meeting with alien representatives. Lisa had been trying to negotiate better conditions for human colonies for 5 years, but the aliens always found ways to ignore her requests. Today, the Nexari delegation was proposing new rules that would make human opinions worth even less than they already were. The Nexari were crystal beings that looked like walking gemstones. They thought they were the smartest species in the galaxy, and they loved making complicated rules that always favored themselves. The lead Nexari, who called himself Bright Thought of Order, was explaining why humans should only have advisory votes in coalition decisions. Humans lack the mental capacity for complex governance, Bright Thought of Order said in his musical crystal voice. It is better for all species if humans focus on the physical labor they perform so well. Lisa had heard these insults for years, and had always stayed polite because that was what diplomats were supposed to do. But today she kept thinking about the message she had received about Jake Morrison and the miners he had saved. She thought about Pete Williams and the factory workers who had stopped their machines. She thought about all the humans across the galaxy who were finally saying they deserved better treatment. Lisa stood up from the conference table and looked at the crystal alien who had just called her species stupid. Ambassador Harper withdraws from these negotiations. Humanity will no longer participate in discussions where we are treated as less than equal partners. The alien representatives made surprised sounds as Lisa walked toward the door. Bright Thought of Order called after her. You cannot simply leave. There are protocols and procedures. Lisa turned back to face the room full of aliens. Protocols and procedures that you write to keep humans under your control. We are done following rules that were made to keep us down. She left the conference room and went straight to the Human Communication Center. Within minutes, she was sending messages to every human diplomatic post in coalition space. The message was simple. Human diplomats should walk away from any meeting where they were not treated with respect. On the military station Deep Space 7, Commander Ben Torres received Lisa's message while he was reviewing deployment orders for human troops. Ben commanded all human military forces in this sector of space, and he had been getting ready to send 3 regiments to fight in a border war that the aliens were having with some unknown enemy. As usual, human soldiers would be sent to the most dangerous positions while alien forces stayed in safe support roles. Ben looked at the deployment orders and thought about all the human soldiers who had died fighting alien wars. Thousands of good people had given their lives for the coalition, and their families had received standard death benefits that barely covered funeral costs. Meanwhile, alien officers got rich from war profits and lived in comfortable homes far from any fighting. The message about Jake Morrison and the miners made Ben think about his own father, who had died fighting for the coalition when Ben was just a boy. His father had believed that humans needed to prove themselves worthy of alien respect by being the best soldiers they could be. Ben had spent his whole career following that belief. But he was starting to wonder if respect could ever be earned from people who saw you as disposable. Ben called his staff officers into the briefing room and waited until everyone was seated. These were good people who had spent years following orders without question. They deserved to know what was happening across human space, and they deserved to make their own choices about what came next. I have received orders to deploy 3 human regiments to the Outer Rim conflict, Ben said. According to these orders, human forces will lead the assault while Vorthak and Nexari units provide support from secure positions. Estimated human casualties are projected at 40%. The officers around the table looked grim but not surprised. This was how human military units were always used in coalition conflicts. Ben pressed a button and the deployment orders appeared on the wall screen for everyone to read. I have also received reports about events on Kepler 442b, Titan 7, and Harmony Point. Humans across the galaxy are beginning to refuse orders that treat us as expendable. I want each of you to make your own decision about whether we follow these deployment orders or whether we join our fellow humans in saying that our lives have value. Colonel Nancy Ford was the first to speak. She commanded the 5th Infantry Regiment and had lost more soldiers than any other human officer in recent years. Sir, if we refuse these orders, the coalition will court-martial us and probably execute us as examples. Ben nodded. That is possible. But if we follow these orders, 40% of our people will die fighting a war that makes alien politicians richer, while human families get funeral notices. The room was quiet for several minutes while the officers thought about their choices. Finally, Major Rick Stone, who commanded the engineering corps, raised his hand. "Commander, what exactly are you suggesting we do?" Ben looked around the room at the faces of people he had worked with for years. These were humans who had dedicated their lives to military service and who believed in protecting innocent people from harm. They had followed orders without question because they thought it was their duty. Now they had to decide whether their duty was to alien commanders or to their own species. "I am suggesting that we stop sending human soldiers to die in alien wars until the Coalition agrees to treat us as equal partners instead of expendable resources. I am suggesting that we use our military training and equipment to protect human civilians instead of alien interests." One by one, the officers around the table voted to support Ben's proposal. When the last vote was counted, the decision was unanimous. Ben opened a secure communication channel that reached every human military unit in Coalition space. "This is Commander Ben Torres speaking to all human military personnel. For 200 years we have served the Coalition faithfully. We have bled and died for their causes while receiving little recognition and less respect. Today that changes. Human forces will no longer accept deployment orders that treat our people as expendable. We will defend human colonies and human interests until the Coalition agrees to negotiate with us as equals." The message was broadcast across the galaxy, and within hours, human military units everywhere were refusing orders and declaring their independence from Coalition command. The aliens were about to learn that the people they had taken for granted were much more dangerous than they had ever imagined. Dr. Helen Price could not sleep. She had been working at the Deep Horizon Research Station for 3 years, studying alien biology and helping to develop new medical treatments for Coalition forces. The station was supposed to be neutral territory, where scientists from all species worked together for the good of the galaxy, but Helen had noticed that human research was always classified while alien discoveries were published and celebrated. Tonight, Helen was alone in the laboratory, running analysis on tissue samples from wounded Vorthak soldiers. The work was routine, but something about the data patterns bothered her. The genetic markers she was seeing looked familiar, but she could not remember where she had seen them before. Helen decided to check the medical database to compare her results with previous studies. What she found changed everything. The genetic analysis software that she was using had been developed by human scientists 15 years ago, but the credit had been given to a Nexari research team. The surgical techniques that saved thousands of alien lives every year had been invented by human doctors, but were officially listed as Zephyrian innovations. Even the medical equipment in her laboratory had been designed by humans but manufactured and marketed by alien corporations. Helen felt sick as she dug deeper into the classified files. Her security clearance as a senior researcher gave her access to historical records that most humans never saw. The pattern was everywhere. For 200 years, human scientists and engineers had been developing new technologies that were then taken by alien governments and used without giving humans any credit. The faster-than-light communication system that connected the galaxy had been invented by a human physicist named Robert Chen in 2298. The official record said it was developed by the Vorthak Science Ministry. The quantum shield generators that protected Coalition ships from energy weapons had been designed by human engineers, but were patented by Nexari crystal corporations. Even the food production systems that fed billions of people across hundreds of worlds had started as human agricultural innovations. Helen copied the files to a secure data chip and sent a message to Jake Morrison on the UCS Defiance. She had heard about what Jake was doing, and she knew he would understand the importance of what she had discovered. When Jake received her message, he immediately contacted Commander Ben Torres and Ambassador Lisa Harper. Within hours, the three leaders of the human resistance were meeting in a secure communication channel. "How much of our technology have they stolen?" Jake asked after Helen finished explaining her discovery. Helen looked at her notes and felt angry all over again. "Everything important. Drive systems, weapons, medical equipment, communication networks, manufacturing processes. The aliens have been taking human innovations and calling them their own for 2 centuries. Ben Torres leaned forward in his chair. "This explains why they need us so badly. We are not just workers and soldiers. We are the source of almost everything that makes their civilization function. Lisa Harper had been quiet during Helen's presentation, but now she spoke with a voice full of cold fury. They have been stealing our ideas and then telling us we are too stupid for complex work. They have been using our inventions to keep us under their control. Jake felt the same anger that had driven him to defy Admiral Kethvar, but this time it was bigger and colder. Helen, can you prove all of this? Can you show other humans what has been done to us? Helen nodded. I have copied everything. Patents, research files, development records, even financial documents showing how much money alien corporations have made from human ideas. The evidence is complete. Jake made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. Then, we are going to show everyone. Ben, how many human settlements can you reach with secure communications? Ben consulted his military networks. All of them. Every human colony, every workstation, every ship crew. What do you want me to tell them? The truth, Jake replied. That we are not just laborers and soldiers. We are the people who built this galaxy, and we have been robbed of everything we created. The message went out immediately. Across hundreds of worlds, millions of humans learned that their species had been systematically cheated for 2 centuries. The reaction was swift and angry. Human workers who had been told they were only good for simple manual labor discovered that they had invented the machines they operated. Human soldiers who had been told they lacked the intelligence for advanced tactics learned that their battle strategies had been copied and used by alien commanders. On the cargo ship, Steady Progress, Captain Frank Miller was hauling food supplies to the Zephyrian hive worlds when he received Helen's data. Frank had spent 20 years flying cargo routes for alien shipping companies and had always been told that humans were too unreliable for important transportation jobs. Now he learned that the navigation systems on his ship had been designed by human engineers and that the cargo handling procedures he followed had been developed by human logistics experts. Frank looked at his crew of 12 humans and made the same decision that Jake Morrison had made in the mines. Change course, he told his navigator. We are not delivering this cargo to the Zephyrians. Sir, we will be in violation of our shipping contract, his first officer replied. Frank smiled grimly. Good. I am tired of working for people who stole everything we gave them and then called us stupid. Across the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out. Human cargo pilots stopped making deliveries to alien worlds. Human engineers shut down the power plants and manufacturing centers they had been operating for decades. Human medical staff walked away from hospitals where they had been saving alien lives while being treated like assistants. The economic impact was immediate and devastating. The Zephyrian hive worlds, which depended entirely on human-operated food distribution networks, began rationing supplies within days. Nexari crystal cities went dark when human technicians stopped maintaining their power systems. Vorthak military bases found themselves unable to launch ships when human mechanics refused to service their vessels. On the coalition capital world of Centauri Prime, emergency meetings were being held around the clock. Admiral Kethvar, who had started this crisis by refusing to help trapped miners, was now facing questions from the High Council about why his entire sector had stopped functioning. The humans are being irrational, Kethvar insisted. They are destroying the very system that gives their lives meaning and purpose. Council leader Sharp Mind of Logic, a Nexari who had governed coalition space for 50 years, studied the reports coming in from across the galaxy. Admiral, it appears that this system has been giving their lives meaning and purpose while giving us the profits and recognition. Perhaps we have miscalculated the nature of our relationship with the human species. Meanwhile, Jake Morrison was coordinating the resistance from his ship above Kepler 442b. The miners who had been trapped in the tunnel collapse were all safe and back to work, but now they were mining for themselves instead of for alien corporations. The Vorthak overseers had been politely but firmly escorted off the planet, and the human workers were discovering how much more efficient they could be when they did not have to follow alien bureaucracy. Amy Collins brought Jake the latest reports from human settlements across the galaxy. Production of everything has stopped in systems where humans do the work. The aliens are starting to panic because they cannot run anything without us. Jake looked at the data and felt a grim satisfaction. For 200 years, humans had been told they were the least important species in the galaxy. Now the galaxy was learning just how important they really were. How long before the aliens start negotiating? Amy asked. Jake thought about Admiral Kethvar and all the other alien commanders who had treated humans like disposable tools. That depends on how much pride they are willing to swallow. But they will negotiate eventually, because they have no choice. We are not just workers and soldiers anymore. We are the people who keep the lights on and the ships flying. Helen Price contacted Jake from her research station with more news. I have been analyzing alien industrial capacity without human involvement. If this continues for another month, their civilization will start collapsing. They need us more than we need them. Jake smiled as he looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, alien leaders were beginning to understand that the species they had dismissed as useful but unimportant was actually the foundation that held their entire galaxy together. The humans who had been told they should be grateful for the chance to serve were about to become the people that everyone else served. General Sektar was not a patient reptile. The Vorthak military commander had built his reputation by solving problems quickly and violently. When the Coalition High Council ordered him to restore order in human space, he saw it as a simple matter of reminding an inferior species about their proper place in the galaxy. Sektar assembled the largest battle fleet in Vorthak history. 200 warships loaded with elite soldiers, and the most advanced weapons in Coalition space. The fleet's destination was Kepler 442b, where this human rebellion had started. Sektar planned to make an example that would end the crisis within days. Humans have forgotten that they exist only because we allow it, Sektar told his officers as the fleet prepared to jump to faster than light speed. They will remember their place, or they will cease to exist. What Sektar did not know was that humans had been preparing for this moment for much longer than anyone realized. While they had appeared to be loyal servants for 2 centuries, some humans had quietly been planning for the day when their species might need to fight for freedom. Commander Ben Torres received intelligence about Sektar's fleet from human technicians who were still working on Coalition ships. The technicians had access to military communications, and they reported every detail of the Vorthak battle plans. Ben immediately contacted Jake Morrison and the other resistance leaders. They are coming with everything they have, Ben warned. 200 ships and enough firepower to destroy every human settlement in this sector. Jake felt fear in his stomach, but he pushed it away. How many ships can we put together? Ben checked his reports from human military units across the galaxy. 37 combat vessels and maybe 50 cargo ships that we can convert to fighting. We are outnumbered, more than 3 to 1. Lisa Harper, who was coordinating diplomatic efforts from Harmony Point, had better news. Not all the aliens support what Sektar is doing. I have been talking to moderate leaders from all 3 species, and some of them think this military action is a mistake. Jake appreciated the diplomatic support, but he knew it would not stop Vorthak warships from attacking human colonies. Ben, where do you think they will hit first? Here, Ben replied without hesitation. Kepler 442b is where this started, and Sektar wants to make a statement. He thinks destroying the mining colony will break human morale across the galaxy. Jake looked out at the planet below where 47 miners were alive because he had refused to accept alien priorities. Now thousands more human lives depended on decisions he would make in the next few hours. Then we make our stand here. How long do we have? 6 hours until they arrive, Ben answered. Jake turned to Amy Collins, who had been listening to the conversation with growing determination. Amy, send a message to every human ship in the sector. Tell them we are going to fight and tell them why. If we lose here, the aliens will know they can control us with fear forever. Amy nodded and began broadcasting on all human communication channels. Her message was simple and direct. Human freedom was worth fighting for, and today was the day to prove it. Across the galaxy, human crews made choices that their ancestors would have been proud of. Captain Frank Miller turned his cargo ship around and headed for Kepler 442b. with a hold full of mining explosives that could be converted to weapons. Dr. Helen Price downloaded every piece of technical data she could access and transmitted it to human engineers who were building improvised weapon systems. Even civilian transport pilots volunteered to fly evacuation missions for women and children who could not fight. When Sektar's fleet arrived at Kepler 442b, they found something unexpected waiting for them. Instead of frightened humans begging for mercy, they faced a coordinated defense force that had turned the asteroid mining equipment into weapons platforms. The human ships were smaller and less heavily armed than Vorthak vessels, but they moved in patterns that the alien commanders had never seen before. Jake Morrison commanded the defense from the bridge of the UCS Defiance. He had studied alien military tactics for years and he knew their weaknesses. Vorthak commanders relied on overwhelming firepower and rigid battle formations. They expected enemies to fight the same way they did. All ships, execute Pattern 7, Jake ordered as the first Vorthak vessels opened fire. The human ships scattered in different directions instead of forming a traditional battle line. Some headed for the asteroid field where they could use the rocks for cover. Others dived toward the planet where the mining installations could provide support fire. A few brave pilots flew directly at the alien fleet, drawing attention while their companions attacked from unexpected angles. Sektar watched the chaotic human movements with contempt. These humans fight like animals instead of soldiers. Concentrate fire on their command ship and end this quickly. But Jake Morrison was not where Sektar expected him to be. Instead of staying safely in the rear giving orders, Jake was flying his ship through the enemy formation, targeting the alien command vessels with precision strikes. The other human captains followed his example, ignoring their own safety to protect their people. The battle was fierce and costly. Human ships were destroyed and good people died fighting for their freedom. But something remarkable was happening. Every time the aliens destroyed a human vessel, 2 more seemed to appear from behind asteroids or up from the planet's surface. The humans were not just fighting with ships, they were fighting with everything they had. Nick Barnes, the chief engineer on Kepler 442b, had spent 3 days turning mining lasers into anti-ship weapons. When Sektar's fleet came within range, Nick and his team opened fire from the planet's surface. The aliens had not expected ground-based resistance and several Vorthak ships were badly damaged before they could respond. Amy Collins coordinated the fighter squadrons that darted between the larger ships like angry insects. The human pilots flew with a desperation and skill that surprised their alien opponents. They knew they were fighting for the future of their entire species, and that knowledge made them more dangerous than any training could. As the battle continued, Sektar began to realize that he had made a serious mistake. The humans were not fighting like the broken slaves he had expected. They were fighting like people who had nothing left to lose and everything to gain. More troubling, they seemed to know exactly how Vorthak ships and weapons worked. "How do they know our tactical frequencies?" demanded Captain Veshkol, Sektar's second-in-command. The answer came when Nick Barnes broadcast a message to the entire Vorthak fleet. "We know your frequencies because we designed your communication systems. We know your weaknesses because we built your ships. We know how to beat you because we have been studying you for 200 years." Across the human fleet, engineers were activating programs they had hidden in alien technology years earlier. Vorthak ships suddenly found their own systems turning against them. Weapons powered down, shields failed, and navigation computers began giving false readings. The aliens were learning that the humans they had trusted to maintain their equipment had been preparing for this day for decades. Sektar's flagship, the dominant Fang, shuddered as its main engines went offline. Human technicians who had worked on the ship months earlier had installed hidden code that could be triggered remotely. The general who had come to crush human rebellion found himself drifting helplessly while smaller human ships attacked his disabled vessel. Jake Morrison opened a communication channel to the Vorthak flagship. When Sektar's angry reptile face appeared on screen, Jake smiled coldly. "General, this is Captain Morrison. I am giving you one chance to withdraw your fleet and return to Coalition space. If you refuse, we will destroy every ship you brought. Here," Sektar hissed with rage. "You are insects playing with weapons you do not understand. I will burn every human world in this sector." Jake nodded as if he had expected this response. Then you will die here with your ships. All human vessels execute final protocol. What happened next became legend among human spacers for generations to come. Every human ship in the battle zone simultaneously activated self-destruct sequences and flew directly at the nearest Vorthak vessel. But these were not suicide attacks. At the last moment, the human crews teleported to safety while their ships exploded against alien hulls. The humans had turned their own deaths into weapons, and Sektar's fleet was destroyed in minutes. The general who had come to restore alien dominance over humanity died when his flagship was rammed by a human cargo vessel, whose crew had already escaped to the planet below. News of the victory at Kepler 442b spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. Humans everywhere learned that their species could stand against the most powerful alien military force and win. More importantly, the aliens learned that the people they had dismissed as useful servants were actually the most dangerous opponents they had ever faced. On the Coalition capital world, emergency sessions were being held to decide how to respond to this unprecedented defeat. For the first time in galactic history, a subject species had not just rebelled, but had won a major military victory against their former masters. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of a new ship, watching the wreckage of Sektar's fleet drift through space. The cost had been high and too many good people had died. The victory at Kepler 442b changed everything, but the war was far from over. Across the galaxy, alien leaders struggled to understand how their most reliable servants had become their most dangerous enemies. Some called for more military action, while others began to realize that force alone would not solve the human problem. Queen Vexara of the Zephyrian Hives was the first alien leader to face the reality of the situation. Her people were starving because human cargo pilots had stopped delivering food shipments. The Zephyrian military was powerful, but it could not eat laser cannons or drink fuel from starships. Without human-operated supply networks, the hive worlds would be dead planets within months. Vexara called an emergency meeting of her royal council and presented them with intelligence reports about human activities across the galaxy. The reports painted a picture that terrified the insect rulers. Humans were not just rebels anymore. They were building their own independent civilization, and they were doing it faster than anyone had thought possible. "My queen," said General Buzzkill 7, the commander of Zephyrian military forces, "we can crush these human uprisings if we deploy our full battle fleets." Vexara looked at her general with the tired patience of a ruler who understood politics better than her soldiers did. "And then what, General? We destroy every human settlement and every human ship. Who will grow our food and transport our goods? Who will maintain the technology that keeps our cities running? We can kill the humans, but we cannot replace them." The economic report supported the Queen's analysis. Without human workers, Zephyrian civilization was collapsing at an accelerating rate. Power plants were shutting down because human technicians had walked away from their jobs. Manufacturing centers stood empty because human engineers had stopped maintaining the equipment. Even the communication networks that connected the hive worlds were failing because humans had designed and operated them for decades. Meanwhile, Commander Ben Torres was coordinating the largest military buildup in human history. The victory at Kepler 442b had proven that humans could fight effectively against alien forces. But Ben knew that one battle did not win a war. He was gathering every human military unit in coalition space and preparing for the larger conflicts that were sure to come. Ben's headquarters was now located on the asteroid station called Freedom Base, which had been hastily constructed from mining equipment and salvaged alien technology. The station was hidden in a nebula that made detection difficult, and it served as the command center for human resistance operations across 3 sectors of space. "How many ships do we have operational?" Ben asked his staff during the daily briefing. Colonel Nancy Ford, who had become Ben's chief of staff, consulted her datapad. 200 combat vessels of various types and about 400 converted cargo ships that can fight if necessary. We also have ground forces on 57 human colonies that have declared independence. The numbers were impressive, but Ben knew they were still outnumbered by the combined alien fleets. The key to human success would be the same advantages they had used at Kepler 442b. superior tactics, better knowledge of alien technology, and the willingness to take risks that their enemies would not consider. Dr. Helen Price had left her research station and joined the Resistance as head of technical development. She was working around the clock to turn human innovation into military advantages. Her team had developed new weapon systems based on alien technology but improved with human engineering. More importantly, they had found ways to disrupt alien equipment using hidden programs and backdoor access codes. The Nexari crystal ships are vulnerable to harmonic resonance, Helen reported to Ben during a secure communication session. If we can get close enough to broadcast the right frequency, we can shatter their hulls from the inside. Ben smiled grimly. The aliens had spent 2 centuries using human inventions against their creators. Now humans were returning the favor, with interest. Ambassador Lisa Harper was also busy building the political foundation for human independence. She had convinced several minor alien species to support human demands for equal treatment in the galaxy. The Corvin Trade Federation and the Alarian Science Collective were both refusing to honor coalition requests for economic sanctions against human settlements. Not all aliens are our enemies, Lisa explained to Jake Morrison during a strategy meeting. Many of the smaller species have been treated almost as badly as we have. They see our rebellion as a chance to change the entire galactic power structure. Jake was glad to have alien allies, but he remained focused on the immediate military situation. More Vorthak fleets were being assembled, and the Nexari crystal cities were building new weapons designed specifically to fight human forces. The aliens were learning from their defeat at Kepler 442b, and they would not underestimate human capabilities again. The next major battle came at the trade station Aurora Base, which controlled shipping routes to 12 different star systems. The Nexari had sent a fleet of crystal ships to recapture the station and restore alien control over human cargo operations. But when they arrived, they found that the station had been transformed into a fortress. Captain Sarah Johnson commanded the human forces defending Aurora Base. She had been a coalition officer for 15 years before joining the Resistance, and she understood both human and alien military thinking. Sarah had turned the station's cargo handling equipment into weapons and had hidden human fighters throughout the asteroid field around the base. The Nexari crystal ships were beautiful and deadly, but they had one weakness that Sarah planned to exploit. Crystal technology was based on harmonic frequencies and resonance patterns that could be disrupted if you knew the right codes. Thanks to Dr. Helen Price's research, the humans knew exactly which frequencies to use. When the alien fleet moved into attack formation, Sarah activated the harmonic disruption broadcasts that Helen's team had installed throughout the asteroid field. The effect was immediate and devastating. Nexari crystal ships began to vibrate violently as their own harmonic systems turned against them. Several vessels literally shook themselves apart before their crews could shut down their weapons. But the Nexari were not helpless victims. Their remaining ships adapted quickly to the harmonic attacks and began using focused crystal beams to destroy the human broadcast stations. The battle turned into a deadly game of hide-and-seek among the asteroids, with both sides using the floating rocks for cover while they hunted each other. Sarah's ship, the UCS Independence, dueled with the Nexari flagship Bright Harmony of Death in a running battle that lasted for hours. The crystal ship was larger and more heavily armed, but Sarah used human tactics that the alien commander could not predict. She flew through debris fields that should have been impassable and used the station's industrial equipment to create improvised weapons. The turning point came when Sarah realized that the Nexari were too proud to retreat even when they were losing. She ordered her remaining ships to pretend to flee while she stayed behind to face the alien flagship alone. The Nexari commander, thinking he had won, moved in for what he believed would be an easy kill. Instead, Sarah led the crystal ship into a trap. The Independence flew directly toward the trade station's main cargo bay, which had been rigged with explosive charges. At the last moment, Sarah's ship teleported to safety, while the Nexari flagship flew into what was essentially a giant bomb. The explosion destroyed both the alien flagship and half of Aurora Base, but it also sent a message that echoed across the galaxy. Humans would rather destroy their own facilities than allow aliens to recapture them. The age of human submission was truly over. News of the victory at Aurora Base reached the Coalition capital, just as Queen Vexara was arriving for emergency negotiations. The Zephyrian ruler had finally convinced the other alien leaders that military action alone would not solve the human crisis. It was time to try diplomacy. The negotiations took place on the neutral station Harmony Point, where Lisa Harper had walked out of her last diplomatic meeting 6 months earlier. Now she returned as the chief representative of independent humanity, and the aliens who had once dismissed her opinions were desperate to hear her terms. Commander Ben Torres and Captain Jake Morrison joined Lisa for the talks, representing human, military, and civilian leadership. Across the table sat Queen Vexara, Council Leader Sharp Mind of Logic of the Nexari, and General Kessitar, who had replaced the dead Sektar as Supreme Vorthak Commander. The aliens came to the negotiations, expecting to offer minor concessions in exchange for human cooperation. Instead, they found themselves facing demands for complete equality and reparations for 2 centuries of exploitation. "You want us to acknowledge that humans are equal partners in galactic civilization?" Queen Vexara said with disbelief. "You want us to pay compensation for the use of human innovations. You want independent human worlds with full voting rights in galactic government." Lisa Harper looked at the alien queen without blinking. "Your Majesty, those are not requests. Those are the minimum requirements for ending this conflict. Humans will no longer accept second-class status in a galaxy we helped to build." Sharp Mind of Logic tried to argue that the human demands were unreasonable, but his protests sounded hollow even to himself.